Jackson Merrill is the opening day center fielder for the San Diego Padres.
I almost said
shortstop. I almost said shortstop. He is the opening day center fielder. So if you are really tired or groggy and you live on the West Coast and you're up at 3 a.m. trying to watch the first baseball game, you're not hallucinating. The top shortstop prospect that isn't 21 years old yet is playing center field for the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, we figured he was going to make the big league roster. That I knew. I felt very confident. I wouldn't say knew, but I felt very confident that, what I had seen out there. We even talked about it before he had the spring that he had, that he just seemed like the perfect candidate to kind of fill a role that they needed, which was just, for me, was outfielder. Yeah. Wasn't center fielder.
No, it could have been left.
Could have been left.
Yeah.
And when I thought about Merrill, when we talked about him, we talked about Merrill fitting into left. Mm-hmm. When I saw Merrill in Arizona, I saw a guy that was more comfortable in left. It's a totally different read. And for guys that play a lot of center, sometimes the read in the corner can be more difficult. For guys that play a lot of left or right, sometimes the read in center can be more difficult. For guys that play shortstop, usually the read of wherever you played more is going to be easier. And Merrill did see some action in left at the end of last year as they started to mix him in. Not a ton, but I imagine that it was a lot of corner work, in between games and things like that in live BP. So I will give the Padres credit. They identified him pretty quickly. I think after 2 games where he started the first 2 games in left, they said, all right, let's move this guy to center field because he looks so comfortable in left. I get it. And they end up just playing him out there nonstop the rest of spring training. So they had a good feeling that he was going to be their center fielder.
Yes.
I think he's going to learn very quickly. But we were joking last night, the idea of Jackson Merrill, or just the idea of a 20-year-old playing a new position, making the opening day roster, and doing it in Seoul, Korea is just like the most throwing the guy into the water and see if he can swim of all time. And the thing is Jackson Merrill is the kind of guy that can swim. The biggest thing is he's been swinging the bat, and I think that's what they care about the most. They need to elongate that lineup. It's very top-heavy, and I think they're willing to weather the storm of maybe some misplayed balls out there.
Sure.
I look at the Marlins with Jazz Chisholm. I think it'll be a similar arc there where there were some plays at Jazz in the beginning. You're like, whoa. But then before you knew it, he was settled in and he was making good plays out there.
And like end of last year when Jazz was playing, he looked great in center field. So that's the kind of guy that you have here. Like Jazz is, like 40-40 capability, right? At least 30-30 capability. He's a freak athlete. Jackson Merrill is not the Jazz freak athlete, but he's a really freaking good athlete.
He's a good athlete, and I think he will compensate for the gap in athleticism with work ethic and the way he goes about his business. It's just, and that's not a slight on Jazz.
No.
That's more of an endorsement on Merrill and just doing the things that not a lot of guys are going to do in terms of putting in additional work and getting additional reps. And good thing for these exhibition games. For sure. It's more reps for him out there.
For sure. And like, especially in a place that he's not, really comfortable with. This is a brand new thing. Like he is actually thrown into the fire, like you said. I want to run through his spring training numbers real quick because this is a guy that came into spring knowing that if he succeeded, he could fast track himself. And we were talking about Preller being a bad man and like, has it really ever worked out? Like we talked about that, right? He pretty much screwed up CJ Abrams. He killed Ryan Weathers. Like AJ Preller has forced guys to the bigs. He killed Tucupita Marcano for a little bit. Like he forces guys that aren't ready. Merrill could be the one that is most ready at this point. I want to run you through the spring numbers real quick. Cat slashing 351, 400, 595. So that's a 995 OPS. The thing that jumps out, 5 extra base hits, 3 punch outs in 40 plate appearances in big league spring.
I think that's the big key, right? Is because I think he's going to put the ball on the ground a bit too much in the early going. Remember, he's a young, long-limbed hitter. There's going to be some growing pains. But I think they wanted to feel as though, okay, we're not throwing him out there and he's getting overmatched. He's getting blown away. So if he goes out there, he's not striking out. He's putting the ball in play. He can run a little bit. He's going to run into some baseballs here and there. He's going to be a bottom of the order bat for them. And I think that's where they look at it where, okay, he can finish his development up here and we'll see how he grows if he's able to hit the ball in the air more and do those things. But I think it's different than some of the other players that have been rushed in the past where it was, I don't know if the bat to ball was there. I don't know if the approach was there. This is a little different with Merrill. I think it is there, but he just may not be tapping into that power the same way because he might be in survival mode a bit. But survival mode for him, is one of the better bottom of the order hitters, I think, in the game as he settles in.
That's the thing. Like, this could have been perceived as survival mode. Like, this was time for me to show out against the best competition I've ever faced in my life in Big League Spring, and he hit 350. If he hit 220, the word rushed crosses my mind.
Yep.
But he hit 350. So I'm eliminating the word rushed when it comes to Jackson Merrill.
I agree. He forced her hand, and you know what? He did some good things. I think when you look last year, the way that he finished, I liked a lot of the things that we saw there, and also just the way he goes about his business. Again, I think this is a little bit of a different circumstance here where he earned it, and I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be on this roster given where they're at and what they need, and the fact that, you know, you're just not going to go outside and get somebody with more upside, I think, than Jackson Merrill without either paying a lot of money, which they don't really have right now, and the free agent market's, you know, kind of thinner now, and not a lot of options, or making a trade, and they just made one. So you know, I don't think they want to deplete too many more prospects unless it's a big splash. So I like it. I think he adds some speed. This is also a lineup that needs a little bit of speed and a little bit more, I think, dynamic aspects to it. And the bat to ball is going to be there. I think the one thing is, you look at a lot of the hits, a lot of them are the other way. I think there's still a little bit of that catching it deep, drifting a little bit. It's a little bit flatter. But again, if he's just spraying balls and it's not as much slug in the early going, that's okay, because he's just filling a role. And I think filling that role may take some of the pressure off of him instead of some of the other. I mean, Abrams was thrown right into shortstop, and I think he was sitting at the top of the lineup at times.
Yeah, I think he was a leadoff hitter.
I don't think they're going to do that with him as much. And I think it's going to, if he's down 9 hitter, he's going to be in a much more comfortable spot. And I think he's going to lean into that and succeed.
I want to jump into the opponent for the Padres this week in Korea, and that's the LA Dodgers. And call it a time buying move all you want. Gavin Stone shoved in Korea. Dave Roberts named him the 5-starter to break camp. Gavin Stone in spring, 9 2/3, 5 hits, 1 run, 9 Ks, 1 walk. Walker Buehler mentioned it on the Just Baseball show on the Monday episode that he had a good spring last year, and like the regular season obviously didn't go well at the major league level. I don't think that's going to happen again. He looks like he's pitching with an MF attitude, and I think this guy can throw angry. And not often do you use the word angry when you talk about a changeup guy, but exactly. He is throwing like he's got something to prove, and I'm really excited to see him try and prove it.
And he does. And the thing is I think he sensed that there's an opening in this rotation, and there's more than an opening.
And he took it.
He took it. And that's what's really exciting. And I know Walker said he's a little bit more partial to Stone because he sees some similarities to himself, you know, just with the way that he throws and kind of his build and just the way that he attacks hitters. And I think with Stone, we saw last year a guy that you mentioned, you know, now he's got that anger and that attack you attitude.
That's what he lacked entirely.
Correct.
In his major league debut, we watched him, it was like, he's pitching scared.
He's pitching scared. Exactly. And that's what I think is the tangible difference here, where it's, oh, I've got the changeup. Okay, that's the one pitch that's going to, you know, be my get out of jail free card. But if I don't have that, how else do I get hitters out? You kind of saw that. It was like, if the changeup is my only option right now, how else am I getting guys out? And that seems like something that he wanted to really work on this offseason. How can I have some other pitches, some other shape to my offerings that I haven't had as much confidence in, to be able to not use that changeup as much as I have?
Yeah.
And look, he's still throwing the changeup plenty, but it's in a position now where he's not throwing it 40-45% of the time, and you know, you're pretty much just ruling out anything that starts low and dives. And I think now you got to be a little bit more honest with the 4-seamer. Then he also mixes in a sinker, and he's got a slider and a cutter. And I think being able to just kind of kitchen sink it with these hitters helps a ton when you don't have another clear cut plus pitch. Kitchen sink it, a bunch of average pitches, then you've got that plus changeup in your back pocket. You can be successful that way. And now it seems like he's a lot more confident, and the velo's up a little bit, and the shape is a little bit better.
And the Dodgers don't need him to be great for 6 months. They need him to be great for 1 month.
Yes.
I think he can be really good for 6 months.
And I think he can eat innings. He seems like the kind of guy that can just do that.
100%.
And that's important too. Even if he's a low 4s guy, I think that's really important. But, and I think we saw with the KBO matchup that changeup, it just shows you how much he can dominate, you know, maybe hitters that aren't quite on the major league level, but at the same time, if you sequence properly, you can dominate major league hitters with that too. And we saw it in spring training. I think some of the other aspects of it though is gaining confidence in that cutter. And I think the cutter allowing the fastball to play up, where, you know, you have different movement patterns of a mid-90s pitch or a low 90s pitch that I think was part of the problem for him. Because, again, if you rule out the changeup, you shut down anything that's lower, you're pretty much sitting fastball, and guys aren't going to miss, an average fastball when they're sitting on it. Now, you've got 3 different movements that are all in a similar speed. That's just a lot more for a hitter to think about, and that's not mentioning the slider as well.
Right. There were a couple of guys that, and we have a couple more names before we get into the spring breakout stuff. There were a couple of guys that have yet to make their major league debut that I was sharpieing into an opening day lineup, and one of which was the Guardians' Kyle Manzardo. And call me an idiot. Like, I guess I just don't understand how he's not going to be the opening day first baseman. Kyle Manzardo played 13 games in spring training for the Guardians. He slashed .381, .458, .476.
Yeah.
And he was reassigned to minor league camp on Monday. Am I a moron? Like, what's going on here?
I don't know.
Say it. Yes or no?
No, you're not a moron, but I don't know what's going on, because I think they're in a unique situation where they've got a lot of things they need to figure out on the big league roster. And I'm looking at, I guess I always go to look at the options, right? In terms of how many options do some of these players have. They went out and traded for Estevan Florial. I think when they look at Florial, like, is he ever going to block Manzardo per se? No. But if Manzardo is in AAA for a month and they can have a little bit more clarity on Florial, and I know they don't play the same position, but it's just another left-handed bat that they have in the lineup or on the roster. I think Davison De Los Santos, they took in the Rule 5. That guy had to make the team, and he really impressed. Yeah. I'll give him that. So that was what they wanted. They wanted to add power. They added power with De Los Santos. Florial has power, and he can play center field. So I think knowing that they have De Los Santos already on the roster, and he's not going to go anywhere until they fully decide maybe he can't survive at the big league level. And I think he's going to be good enough to survive and be a platoon piece and whatever, especially with how young he is and the projection there and how he showed. I think with Florial having no options, I feel like they have to wait. Don't have to, but they want to wait.
Because they're trying to win a division. They're in a division that they can win. And we're talking about options for Estevan Florial.
They don't have a center fielder. They don't have a center fielder, really. So, like,
might I tell you, the Guardians are killing Drew Thorpe right now, 5-0 in the first, highlighted by 3-run homer from Chase DeLauder.
Oh, wow, really? Yeah, and he might be the guy that ends up getting up later. So I think that's part of the reason, too. He's going to buy them some time when DeLauder can be ready and things like that. It is a little surprising. There was a little bit more whiff from Manzardo in spring training, I think, than maybe they were expecting, and that might be part of it. But I honestly think he'll be up pretty quickly, and I think they just want a little bit more roster clarity. And he kind of clogs them a little bit more. Because who are you sending down if in a situation where Manzardo makes the team? Because I'm looking at the roster resource right now. Outside of the starters, right now they have Florial pegged as the DH, which doesn't really make sense. But again, because he's the other option in center field. You have Straw there right now. Then the bench is De Los Santos, Will Brennan, Tyler Freeman, and then Austin Hedges. Freeman, but he showed pretty well, and he can play. I guess they have too many guys that could play center field. I guess I'm okay with ditching one of those guys, but Freeman only has one more option. So you would be burning his last option.
Frankly, like, if Davison wasn't playing as well as he was, I would just return Davison. But that's not the case.
Yeah, and they can't. They can't do that yet. So I hear you, and I would have preferred to have Manzardo in this line on this team. I think they're better with Manzardo at the DH spot than Florial, but I think they're looking at Florial as one of the options in center field as they try to just piece it together through the first couple months, because Miles Straw might not be an option and Freeman might not be an option. I think very quickly one of those guys is going to get pushed aside for Manzardo to get an opportunity. So hopefully he'll be up within a month. But it is a unique roster situation over there.
Yeah, 2 more guys before we get to the spring breakout stuff, and those are quick. Wyatt Langford, I just want to run you through like where he stands in Major League Baseball entering spring training play on Monday. Langford's hitting .381. That is third in all of Major League Baseball in spring training, behind Mookie Betts and Lawrence Butler. Shout out the Oakland A's. 16 hits is tied for third. 5 homers was tied for second, only behind Kyle Stowers, and now it's tied for third because O'Neal Cruz just got to 7 homers. He was tied with David Bodie and O'Neal Cruz, which is fascinating. 16 runs driven in was the most in Major League Baseball in spring training, and his 1235 OPS was the best. This guy, I think, should be the odds-on Rookie of the Year frontrunner in the American League.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's pretty wild to see. It's just, I almost figured he'd have to slow down a little bit in spring training after
Yeah.
what we saw last year, and he did start slow. So I was like, okay, maybe he's human now. Like he's gonna have a little bit of a coming back to earth, just a tad. I figured it'd
No.
be slow out of the gate in spring training, go to AAA maybe, and then ball out there and get called up. But then he turned the page so quickly after a bad couple games,
Yeah.
had that multi-homer day, and then all of a sudden it just started to roll and roll and roll, and he hasn't slowed down. I think what stands out to me is that the swing decisions are good. He's getting his best swing off consistently. He's looking dynamic in terms of how fast he is. I mean, the speed is just such an underrated aspect of it too. To be able to draw the walks, to be able to hit the ball hard, making plenty of contact too. Like you can't really poke a hole in his game right now, and he's only going to get better. The Rangers are better with him on the opening day roster. They know that, and he's made it to the point now where it's not even a conversation. Right? Anything shy of him on the opening day roster is service time manipulation. And
yes.
we were just talking about how that gets thrown out too much.
Yes.
In this instance, it would 100% be service time manipulation. I will say with Manzardo, that might be a little bit of an incentive too, because they know he's going to be a piece for a long time.
Absolutely could. One more guy before we kind of separate the YouTube videos and talk about spring breakout. Kyle Stowers. I'm going to continue screaming it from the mountaintops. He's too good to be in AAA. Kyle Stowers had a 3-homer day on Saturday, I want to say. It was either Saturday or Sunday. It wasn't televised. It might have been Sunday. But 7 homers, 13 driven in. He's OPSing 1,200 in spring training right now. And I just want to remind you what Kyle Stowers is doing in AAA. Has he gotten up to the bigs and has he not been good? Yes, absolutely. That's been the case. 2023 last year, he was really bad. He was 2 for 30, punched out 12 times. In 2022, 34 games at the major league level, had a 720 OPS. You need to be better as an offensive predicated player. But 2021 in the minor leagues, an 898 OPS. 2022 in the minor leagues, an 884 OPS. 2023 in the minor leagues, a 954 OPS. Get this cat out of the minor leagues right now.
Yeah, I really don't want to see him in Norfolk, but at the same time, where the heck is he gonna go?
And that's the thing. Like I've presented this thought exercise. Like, okay, close your eyes and put together the ultimate team of the Baltimore Orioles that you will run out in 2026. Kyle Stowers isn't making the bench, so trade him.
Yes,
trade him.
I hope they do. And I think the part that was kind of lost last year was not only just because people aren't as focused on Stowers because of all the talent, but also he was banged up a lot. He had a shoulder issue that, I mean, we know how that impacts, hitters plenty. Yeah. And then once he comes back from that, he breaks his nose. I think he got hit with a pitch in the face. So, I mean, when you break your nose right after having a shoulder issue, that's got to be frustrating, kind of take you out of your rhythm at the plate. And he has that big league stint. But, I mean, that was, sandwiched with all these injuries and I think a little bit of frustration mounting and things like that. I think with him healthy now, he's an above average regular corner outfielder, and I think more trade capital for the Orioles. I hope he gets an opportunity elsewhere or some weird scenario where he gets a chance. But with the way Kowser's looked, who's looked awesome, by the way, too, he's made some subtle adjustments.
There's no chance.
There's no chance. He's made some subtle adjustments to his setup.
Yeah.
I really like what I'm seeing from him, and I think it's going to result in more contact. It seems like Stowers is the odd man out, but he's given himself maybe the opportunity to get an opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk spring breakout in a moment. Before that, quick break.